The moment approaches. On one side of the serving line, a group of young German women, their faces etched with suspicion. For years they survived on watery soup and hard rye bread. On the other side, an American cook, holding a platter of something they've never seen. It's not a weapon. It's not a threat. It's a hamburger. In minutes, they will be ordered to eat. In seconds, their perception of their enemy and their future will be irrevocably altered. The first bite is just moments away, a countdown to a surrender more profound than any on the battlefield. To understand this strange standoff, one must first understand the world these women came from, a world that had ceased to exist just weeks earlier. The Germany of May 1945 was a landscape of apocalypse. Cities were not just bombed. They were anatomized, their steel skeletons laid bare to the sky. The symphony of daily life was replaced by the drone of flies and the silence of starvation. For these internees, former clerks and nurses for a defunct war machine, memory was a catalog of hunger. They remembered the dwindling rations, the rye bread stretched with sawdust, until it was more wood than grain, the triumph of finding a single, forgotten potato in a rubble-strewn garden. Food was survival, a grim calculus of calories devoid of joy or flavor. Their world was gray, and the taste of their world was the taste of ash. Into this bleak reality, the Americans introduced color and confusion. They were occupiers, yes, but their presence brought with it an almost obscene abundance. Canned goods were stacked in pyramids. Crates of supplies seemed to arrive endlessly. To the German women, peering through the wire of their compound, it was like watching a different species operate on a different plane of existence. And now that existence was being forced upon them, presented on a metal tray. The object itself was an offense to their sensibilities. It was not the dense, dark bread they knew. This bun was pale, soft, and unnervingly perfect. The meat patty was thick and greasy, its origin a mystery. And the bright red sauce, this ketchup, looked alarmingly like blood. Alongside it sat a dark, bubbling liquid in a glass bottle, Coca-Cola, a name that meant nothing. It was a... Whispers rippled through the line. Was it safe? Was it even food? The standoff could not last forever. An order was given, translated, and repeated. Eat. Hesitantly, the trays were taken. The women sat, staring at the offering as if it were a live grenade. Then, one of them, perhaps driven by a hunger that finally overpowered her pride, lifted the strange sandwich to her lips. Silence fell over the mess hall as everyone watched. She took a small, cautious bite. Her eyes widened. There was no explosion, no trick. There was only flavor. An astonishing wave of it. The savory, salty richness of the beef, the slight sweetness of the bun, the tangy punctuation of the ketchup. It was a sensory assault, a complex symphony of tastes for a palate accustomed to a single, monotonous note of deprivation. It wasn't just nourishment. It was a revelation. It tasted of a world they had forgotten existed, a world where food could be a source of pleasure, not just a grim necessity for survival. Slowly, another woman took a bite, then another. The rigid lines of suspicion on their faces began to soften, replaced by a dawning sense of wonder. The silence was broken by quiet murmurs, then by the surprising sound of tentative enjoyment. This simple meal was disarming them in a way no weapon ever could. This was more than a culinary encounter. It was a psychological turning point. The hamburger became a powerful edible symbol. It represented the sheer, overwhelming power of the nation that had defeated them. A country that could afford to grind up so much good beef for a single, casual meal possessed a logistical and industrial might that Germany could never have hoped to match. But it was also a symbol of something else, an unexpected and disorienting humanity. Their captors were not the monsters of Goebbels' speeches. They were men who cooked, who offered food that was, against all expectation, delicious. This act of feeding them wasn't a punishment. It was a strange, almost gentle, introduction to a new reality. In the days that followed, the atmosphere in the camp began to shift. The American cooks, noticing the change, started a small, informal, cultural exchange. They began demonstrating how to prepare the hamburgers, how to properly drink an ice-cold Coca-Cola. A tentative rapport was built over the sizzle of the grill. For a brief moment, they were not victors and prisoners, but simply people sharing a recipe. It was the first, fragile bridge built across the chasm of war, a non-political reconciliation happening one meal at a time. The war had been won with tanks and bombers, but perhaps the peace began here, with a simple hamburger that tasted like the future.